Following his extradition to Los Angeles, Samuel Little faced charges for the 3 murders linked to his DNA. During his incarceration, the depth of his criminal activities began to surface. Texas Ranger James Holland, renowned for his skills in extracting confessions from difficult suspects, played a central role in unraveling Little's extensive list of crimes. Welcome to an all-new episode of the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast. This week, we dive into our series, Shit Out of Luck, and how Samuel Little was finally caught. So join us as we dive into one of the most prolific serial killers of all time. But before we do that, don't forget you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Just search the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast. And leave your comments in the comment section below. And without further ado, let's dive in. Samuel Little, also known as Samuel McDowell, became infamous as America's most prolific serial killer, with confessions to over 90 murders spanning more than 40 years. His eventual capture in 2012 was the result of diligent investigative work, significant advancements in forensic technology, and the relentless efforts of dedicated law enforcement officers. We're going to explore the intricate details of how Samuel Little was finally apprehended, the myriad challenges faced by investigators, the profound impact his capture had on the victims' families and the broader community. Samuel Little's early life was characterized by instability and a predilection for criminal activity. He was born on June 7, 1940, in Reynolds, Georgia. Little experienced a tumultuous childhood. His mother, reportedly a teenage prostitute, abandoned him, leaving Little to be raised by his grandmother in Lorain, Ohio. This environment, lacking structure and stability, set the stage for a troubled adolescence and early adulthood. Little's criminal behavior began in his teenage years with minor offenses, but his record quickly escalated to more serious crimes. His first significant brush with the law occurred in 1956, when he was arrested and later sentenced to 3 years in a juvenile institution for breaking and entering. Throughout the 60s and 70s, Little's criminal activities ranged from shoplifting and fraud to assault and attempted rape. He spent multiple stints in prison but showed no signs of rehabilitation. Instead, these early experiences with the justice system seemed to refine his ability to evade capture and continue his predatory behavior. Little's criminal record spanned multiple states, reflecting a transient lifestyle that further complicated efforts to track his movements. He often used different aliases, making it difficult for law enforcement to connect his various offenses. This period of his life laid the groundwork for the patterns of violence that would define his later years as a serial killer. Samuel Little's evolution from a petty criminal to a serial killer began in earnest in the early 1970s. Unlike many serial killers who have a clear escalation in their methods, Little's approach was disturbingly consistent from the outset. He targeted women who lived on the fringes of society, sex workers, drug addicts, and women who were often not immediately missed by their communities. This choice of victims was both strategic and predatory, exploiting societal vulnerabilities and systemic failures. Little's method of murder was brutally efficient. He used his strength, honed from his days as an amateur boxer, to subdue his victims quickly. Typically, he would approach a woman in public spaces, often offering them rides or money. Once in his car, he would drive to a secluded area where he would attack. His preferred method of killing was strangulation, a method that left few physical traces and required little preparation. After the murders, Little demonstrated a cold and calculated approach to disposing of the bodies. He often left them in remote areas, such as rural roadsides, alleyways, or abandoned buildings, locations that would ensure that bodies were not found immediately. This method allowed decomposition to set in, complicating identification and the collection of forensic evidence. His ability to blend into different communities and his transient lifestyle helped him avoid suspicion and arrest for decades. Despite the brutality and frequency of his crimes, Samuel Little managed to avoid significant scrutiny from law enforcement for many years. Part of his ability to remain undetected was due to the nature of his victims. Many of the women he killed were marginalized and lived lifestyles that made them less likely to be reported missing promptly. Additionally, the murders were spread across numerous states, making it difficult for law enforcement agencies to connect the dots. The landscape of a criminal investigation in the 70s and 80s were vastly different from today. There was no centralized database to connect murders across state lines, and communication between jurisdictions was often limited. As a result, Little's murders were investigated in isolation with the local police departments, unaware that they were dealing with a serial offender operating on a national scale. Little's arrest in 2012 for a narcotics charge in Kentucky was a pivotal moment. At the time, he was living in a homeless shelter and was far from the attention of law enforcement. However, the collection of his DNA was part of a routine booking process and provided the breakthrough investigators had been waiting for. The DNA matched samples from unsolved murders in Los Angeles, linking him definitively to the crimes. The advancements in DNA technology were instrumental in finally bringing Samuel Little to justice. In the 1980s and 90s, DNA profiling was still a developing science. Many crime scenes from that era lacked meticulous evidence collection standards that are now commonplace. However, the preservation of biological samples allowed for re-examination with modern techniques decades later. In Little's case, the DNA collected during his 2012 arrest was crucial. Entered in CODIS, the FBI's national DNA database, it matched DNA evidence from 3 unsolved murders in Los Angeles. This match provided the first tangible link between Little and his victims, allowing law enforcement to pursue charges with confidence. The re-examination of cold cases with modern DNA technology became a critical component of the investigation. Law enforcement agencies across the country began to revisit old cases, testing preserved evidence that had previously yielded no results. This process not only confirmed Little's involvement in the LA murders, but also opened the door to linking him with other unsolved cases nationwide. DNA technology's role extended beyond simply matching samples. It also helped exonerate individuals wrongfully convicted of crimes and provided new leads in cases that had long gone cold. The ability to retest old evidence with advanced techniques transformed the landscape of criminal investigation, highlighting the importance of preserving forensic evidence and maintaining comprehensive databases. Following his extradition to Los Angeles, Samuel Little faced charges for the 3 murders linked to his DNA. During his incarceration, the depth of his criminal activities began to surface. Texas Ranger James Holland, renowned for his skills in extracting confessions from difficult suspects, played a central role in unraveling Little's extensive list of crimes. Holland's approach to interviewing Little was methodical and patient. He spent hours listening to Little's life stories, building a rapport that would eventually lead to trust. Little, who seemed to enjoy the attention and opportunity to recount his exploits, began to confess to additional murders. Over time, he provided detailed accounts of his crimes, describing the victims, their final moments, and where he had left their bodies. One of the most remarkable aspects of Little's confessions was his ability to recall specific details about each murder. He described the clothes his victims wore, the places he picked them up, and the exact locations where he had disposed of their bodies. His ability to sketch his victims from memory decades after the murders provided investigators with critical clues that helped identify many of the women. Holland's interviews with Little extended over months, during which Little confessed to killing 93 women between 1970 and 2005. These confessions were corroborated with existing cold cases, leading to the identification of numerous victims and the resolution of many long, unsolved cases. Little's willingness to confess was driven in part by a desire for recognition and control over his narrative. His detailed accounts provided invaluable information, helping to close cases that had stumped investigators for decades. The full extent of Samuel Little's killing spree emerged gradually as investigators pieced together his confessions with cold cases across the country. Little claimed to have murdered 93 women, a figure that initially seemed implausible. However, as law enforcement agencies began verifying his confessions, the grim reality of his claims became clear. Each verification involved painstaking work. Investigators cross-referenced Little's detailed descriptions with existing cold cases, looking for matches in time, location, and method. The process required collaboration across multiple jurisdictions, with local, state, and federal agencies working together to confirm Little's accounts. As more confessions were corroborated, the scope of Little's crimes became apparent. He had operated with impunity for over 35 years, targeting some of the most vulnerable members of society. His ability to evade detection for so long highlighted significant gaps in the criminal justice system, particularly in how cases involving marginalized victims were handled. The verification process not only provided closure to many cold cases, but also brought attention to the systemic issues that allowed Little to continue his killing spree unchecked. Verifying Samuel Little's confessions was a complex and multifaceted process. Many of his victims were never reported missing, or if they were, their cases had gone cold due to lack of evidence and leads. The transient nature of both Little and his victims meant that many cases were poorly documented with little to no forensic evidence preserved from the crime scenes. One of the biggest challenges was the passage of time. Many of Little's murders occurred in the 70s and 80s, decades before his arrest. Over the years, physical evidence had degraded, witnesses had passed away, or their memories had faded, and records had been lost or destroyed. Despite these obstacles, investigators pressed on, driven by the need to bring closure to the victims' families. The process involved re-examining cold cases, conducting new interviews with anyone who might have relevant information, and using modern forensic techniques to retest any available evidence. Little's confession provided a roadmap for investigators, but each case required meticulous work to confirm the details. Collaboration was key in this effort. Law enforcement agencies across the country shared information and resources, working together to match Little's confessions with unsolved cases. The FBI played a central role in coordinating these efforts, providing expertise and support to local agencies. This collaborative approach was essential in overcoming the challenges posed by the age and scope of the cases. In 2014, Samuel Little was convicted of the 3 Los Angeles murders and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This conviction marked the beginning of a series of legal proceedings as more of his confessions were verified and additional charges were brought against him in various states. Each new trial brought further revelations about Little's crimes and his methods. Prosecutors presented evidence from his confessions, corroborated by forensic analysis and witness testimony. Defense attorneys, while often limited in their ability to dispute the overwhelming evidence, sought to ensure that Little received a fair trial in each jurisdiction. The legal process was not only about securing convictions, but also providing a platform for the victims' families to seek justice. Many family members attended the trials, offering emotional testimony about the impact of their loved ones' murders. For some, the trials brought a sense of closure, while for others, it reopened old wounds and highlighted the years of pain and uncertainty they had endured. Little's cooperation with investigators continued throughout the legal proceedings. Despite his age and deteriorating health, he remained willing to provide information about additional murders, driven by a complex mix of motivations, including a desire for recognition and a need to unburden himself of his crimes. His ongoing confessions ensured that the legal process would continue for years, as investigators worked to verify and prosecute each new case. The capture and conviction of Samuel Little had a profound impact on law enforcement practices across the U.S. and highlighted critical areas for improvement, particularly in the handling of cold cases and the importance of maintaining and updating forensic databases. One of the key lessons from Little's case was the necessity of preserving and re-examining old evidence. Advances in DNA technology and forensic science meant that previously unsolvable cases could now be revisited with new tools and techniques. This led to the establishment of dedicated cold case units within many police departments, tasked with systematically reviewing unsolved cases and identifying potential links to known offenders. The case also underscored the importance of better coordination between different law enforcement agencies. Little's crimes spanned multiple states and jurisdictions, and the lack of communication between these entities allowed him to evade capture for decades. In response, many agencies implemented new protocols for sharing information and collaborating on investigations, ensuring that crucial evidence and intelligence were not lost in bureaucratic silos. The FBI played a significant role in the process, creating a task force specifically to address the backlog of cold cases involving serial offenders. This task force worked closely with local and state agencies, providing resources and expertise to support their investigations. The success of this initiative demonstrated the effectiveness of a coordinated multi-agency approach to tackling complex criminal cases. The capture of Samuel Little was a monumental achievement in the annals of criminal justice, showcasing the relentless determination of investigators and the power of forensic science. Little's confessions not only provided answers to decades-old mysteries, but also underscored the importance of never giving up on unsolved cases. As law enforcement agencies continue to pursue justice for all victims, the case of Samuel Little serves as a stark reminder of the enduring impact of violent crime and the unyielding quest for truth. In the end, the story of Samuel Little is not just about the man who committed the crimes, but about the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable tragedy. It's a testament to the tireless efforts of those who seek justice and the enduring hope that, even in the darkest of times, the truth will prevail. The lessons learned from Little's case continue to shape the future of criminal investigations, ensuring that no victim is ever forgotten and that every effort is made to bring their stories to light. And now, before we wrap up this episode, we'd like to take this time to thank our sponsor, Audible. I want to take a moment to talk about something that's really enhanced my daily routine, and that's Audible. If you're like me, you love a good story, but sometimes struggle to find time to sit down with a book. That's where Audible comes in. With Audible, you can dive into a great book while you're on the go, whether I'm riding the bus to work, hitting the gym, or just doing chores around the house. Audible keeps me entertained and informed. They have an incredible selection of audiobooks, podcasts, and even exclusive Audible originals that you can't find anywhere else. One of my favorites that I'm listening to right now is Zodiac. The narration is top-notch, and it's made my commute something I actually look forward to. Plus, with Audible, you get a free credit each month to pick any book you want. And if you don't love it, you can exchange it, no questions asked. The best part? You can try Audible for free for 30 days. Just head over to audibletrial.com/Larry21. Trust me, once you start listening, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. And with that, we'd like to remind you to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button that's down right there. And of course, if you want to support the channel even more, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TCNS. As always, your support helps the channel grow, upgrade our equipment, bring in new hosts, be able to pay them, and hopefully one day take this show on the road. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.